Hey, welcome back to It's the People, a space where we talk honestly about relationships, growth, clarity, and navigating life in a world that can feel confusing sometimes. And before we get into this, let me say what I always say. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a relationship expert. I'm just someone who has lived, learned, made mistakes, and grown through experiences, especially when it comes to love, relationships, and figuring out who you really are. And sometimes what I realize is it's not always you. Sometimes it's the people. Let's talk about something that a lot of people are feeling right now. Dating is exhausting, not just disappointing, not just confusing, exhausting. And the reason it's exhausting isn't always because there aren't good people out there. It's because a lot of people are performing who they think someone wants, performing confidence, performing emotional availability, performing interest. And when everyone is performing, nobody is actually being real. Let's be honest for a second. How many times have you looked back at a relationship and realized you weren't actually being yourself? You were being the version of yourself you thought would keep them interested. You answered texts faster. You said yes when you meant maybe. You ignored red flags. You laughed at things that didn't actually feel funny. And somewhere along the way, you stopped being you and started auditioning. You know what auditioning in relationships look like? You start overthinking everything. What did they mean by that text? Should I wait to respond? Am I being too much? Am I not doing enough? And the entire time, your nervous system is on edge. You're not relaxed. You're not safe. You're managing impressions. This is where people confuse chemistry because sometimes what feels like chemistry is actually anxiety. It's intensity. It's unpredictability. It's emotional highs and lows. But real alignment, real connection, it actually feels calm. And a lot of people mistake calm for boring because chaos feels so familiar. Here's the honest truth. If someone genuinely wants clarity with you, you won't feel confused. Confusion usually shows up when someone is unsure, inconsistent, or emotionally unavailable. And instead of accepting that reality, we start filling in the gaps. We create stories. We imagine potential. We hold on to who someone could be instead of paying attention to who they actually are. This is where projection happens. You don't miss the person, You miss the idea of the person. You miss the version of the person you believed they would eventually become. And that can keep people stuck for months, even years, holding on to potential instead of accepting reality. Real love doesn't require you to perform. You don't have to shrink. You don't have to prove your value. You don't have to convince someone to choose you. Because the right connection, it's mutual. It's steady. It's clear. And it allows you to breathe. And this doesn't just apply to romantic relationships. It applies to friendships, work environments, even family dynamics sometimes. Anywhere you feel like you have to constantly prove your worth. That's not alignment. That's survival mode. One thing I had to learn the hard way was this: you can't build a healthy connection while ignoring your own intuition. That little voice that tells you something feels off, that voice is data. It's information. And when we ignore it repeatedly, we start disconnecting from ourselves. Dating actually becomes easier when you stop trying to be chosen and start paying attention to how someone makes you feel. Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel respected? Do you feel seen? Or do you feel like you're constantly trying to prove your worth? Because if you're constantly proving, you're probably not aligned. At some point, you realize something important. You don't need to convince the right people to stay. You don't need to prove that you're worthy of being loved. And when you stop performing, you start attracting people who actually appreciate who you already are. Sometimes growth looks like letting go of people who only like the version of you that performed and choosing peace, choosing clarity, choosing alignment, even if it means walking away from confusion. And remember, it's not always you. Sometimes it's the people. You have been listening to It's the People podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and send to a friend. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.